Welcome to our discussion on media influence, where we explore how media shapes opinions and behaviors in everyday life. Over the next few minutes, we'll unpack the forces that guide public perception, the psychological mechanisms at work, and practical steps to reduce harm, so you can better understand the media landscape around you. This presentation is organized into 4 parts: an introduction to media influence, the mechanisms behind that influence, how the digital age changes the rules, and finally ways to mitigate negative effects while looking ahead. Each section builds on the previous one to give a clear, practical view of how media impacts individuals and society. In this first section, we set the stage by defining what media influence really means and why it matters. We'll look at how media has evolved and why different channels, print, broadcast, and digital, affect audiences differently, so you get a sense of the big picture before we dive into the psychological and social details. Media influence didn't appear overnight. It grew from newspapers and radio to TV and now social platforms, changing how people form beliefs and norms. Different channels play distinct roles. Traditional outlets provide curated news, while digital platforms enable rapid sharing and peer influence, all contributing to how culture and public opinion are shaped today. Media serves several core roles in society. It gives us information, frames public debates, and helps build cultural norms. As you look at the 3 panels on this slide, notice how news delivery, story selection, and cultural messaging work together to influence what people believe, how they act, and what behaviors become socially acceptable over time. Now we turn to the mechanisms that explain how media actually affects minds and behavior. This section explores psychological pathways like attention, emotion, and learning, and shows how framing and agenda setting change what people consider important. Understanding these processes helps us see why repeated exposure and emotional stories can be so persuasive. Media impacts cognition, emotion, and behavior in distinct but connected ways. By directing attention and framing information, media changes how we interpret facts. Emotionally charged content can amplify empathy or fear. Repeated exposure and modeled actions then influence what people do. Together, these psychological effects help explain shifts in attitudes and everyday decision-making. Framing and agenda setting are 2 powerful tools media uses to shape what audiences notice and how they interpret events. Framing highlights certain aspects of a story to guide interpretation, while agenda setting prioritizes which topics get attention, as seen in case studies like climate coverage and election reporting, where salience shapes public concern more than opinion itself. In the digital age, media influence accelerates and fragments, so this section looks at how online environments change the game. Rapid sharing, targeted content, and influencer culture amplify reach and speed, while algorithms and social networks alter exposure patterns. These changes affect both how information spreads and how people form identities around media consumption. Social media platforms have transformed communication by enabling instant sharing, viral trends, and direct peer influence. Viral content can push ideas into the mainstream almost overnight, while online communities shape youth identity through peer validation and curated personas. This slide highlights how connectivity brings both new opportunities for engagement and new vulnerabilities to manipulation. Misinformation spreads quickly on digital platforms because engagement-driven algorithms often amplify sensational content. That makes verification and fact-checking essential, and it underscores the importance of media literacy so people can evaluate sources, spot bias, and avoid sharing false or harmful information. Addressing these challenges requires tools, skills, and responsible platform policies. In the final section, we focus on practical responses and future directions, starting with media literacy education. Teaching people to think critically about sources, identify bias, and verify facts empowers better decision-making. Encouraging mindful consumption habits and diverse information diets reduces susceptibility to misinformation and fosters a healthier media environment for everyone. Promoting ethical practices completes the toolkit. Journalistic standards like accuracy and transparency build public trust, while regulation and accountability can deter harmful behavior. Looking ahead, emerging technologies and greater emphasis on media education offer hope for more responsible influence, making it possible to balance freedom of expression with protections against misinformation. Thank you for joining this exploration of media influence. As you reflect on these ideas, consider how your own media habits shape what you believe and share. Small changes in the way we consume and verify information can have big effects, and together we can promote a more informed, thoughtful media culture moving forward.